Dylan does not want to see your horny fan art, but Dalton absolutely does.
Yeah.
Great.
In 2017, Universal Studios announced the birth of a new shared universe of monster movies, bringing their classic horror icons into the contemporary franchise film landscape. But after the critical and financial failure of its first installment, the project was indefinitely abandoned. Now, in 2022, the powers that be have called upon one pulp horror devotee and one snarky film critic to unearth the concept. I'm Dylan Roth.
And I'm Dalton Dylan.
Are you afraid of the dark universe?
Hello and welcome to Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe? I'm your co-host, Dylan Roth.
And I'm the other co-host, Dalton Dylan.
And this is the show where we, two writers, have been hired by Universal Studios anonymously to revamp
real.
Yes.
In real life.
To revitalize their failed Dark Universe shared cinematic saga experiment.
We say in secret, even though we're doing a podcast about it.
Yes, but
the audience is small enough that it's still qualified as a secret.
That's right. It's one of those
for not much longer.
So if this is the first time listening, what we do most weeks on this show is that one of us comes in to the studio with a pitch, a scriptment of the next movie in the saga. We use the existing 2017 Mummy movie as our jumping off point, and then creating an Infinity Saga style epic. We are now into phase 2 of that epic. We have, including The Mummy, which we inherited, and 2 more movies, which you grandfathered in to our universe now. 9 movies in the Dark Universe.
We're counting the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies as like the number. I don't think we should.
You did that though. I mean, no, I'm not changing the numbers. I'm not changing the numbers.
Here's the thing: do we count the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies as MCU movies? When you're saying how many MCU movies there are,
yeah,
right?
But those are different universes. You literally decided later that our movies are sequels to those movies.
Yes, but those movies were created before the Dark Universe existed, so I don't think they count.
Okay,
they're
all
sort
right.
of grandfathered.
We can work this out later.
The numbering is different.
We have told 6 of our own stories, plus the 2017 The Mummy, plus now the 1999 The Mummy counts, and the 2001 The Mummy Returns counts. And again, that means that our continuity includes 2 movies called The Mummy and 2 movies called The Mummy Returns. Thanks so much for that, Dalton.
And one called The Mummy Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
So we are gonna include the Dragon Emperor. Okay.
Yetis exist in the Dark Universe.
All right. So
you haven't seen them yet, but there are Yetis.
We have been building a grand mythology of our own out of the sort of fallen tree of the Mummy and the original Dark Universe. And so from that has sprouted a whole new
this is beautiful.
Cast of characters. I know I'm getting very flowery in my language.
I love the imagery.
Now we've reached we've done enough now, established what this universe is going to be like, that we're beginning to get some feedback, not just from listeners, but from our mysterious benefactors at Universal.
Universal has been calling us up with, here was the deal. The deal with us and them from the beginning was they are not allowed to touch the films until the entire saga is completed. We get kind of full reign of crafting the entire Infinity Saga without studio interference, so we can present it all as one big package and then tweak it from there.
The other side of that being that we don't see a dime until we're done.
Yes, unfortunately. But what we didn't negotiate, and I think this is where today's episode comes in, is we didn't negotiate all of the stuff outside of the movies.
Yeah, we didn't talk about new media.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about merchandise. We didn't talk about any of that stuff.
We do have a clause for streaming shows and things like we
do get to do that.
Any sort of like storytelling medium we can kind of control, but this is going to be a huge franchise. This is going to be globe shaking. This is a multi-billion-dollar.
Yeah, this is the Marvel killer.
Crushing. Yeah. James Cameron will wish he directed a Dark Universe movie.
And you know what? We haven't written him out yet.
No,
it could still happen.
Yeah. He's pretty busy right now, though, with 8 Avatar movies on his plate, but who knows?
And we welcome them, apparently.
I'm going to make them canon.
All right, so now our actual direct contact at Universal still insists on anonymity, even though this podcast has been such a wild success and everyone wants these movies to be made. But they were willing to reach out about particular topics through a third-party contractor. In this case, we have a representative hired by the studio to talk about crafting and properly exploiting the fan culture around our dark universe. So please welcome to the show fan community expert and proxy for Universal Studios, Frankie Starker.
Hello, it's great to be here with you both. Thank you so much for being so open to my presence. And as you said, I'm not technically employed by Universal. Do not wish to reveal my particular origins, but as Dylan mentioned, I am a longtime fan of Fandom. Really.
Great, yeah.
So,
and this makes sense because Dylan and I are storytellers first and foremost. We're here to write this these scriptments and stuff like that, but. I'll admit that when it comes to engaging on social media or with sort of modern, the TikTok Zoomers and stuff like that, we're figuring it out as we go. And sort of anticipating the fan reaction has been something that we've,
It's come up when we've talked about the story.
Yes.
We're trying to anticipate it, but we don't necessarily have our fingers on the pulse of the community. So basically, we're sort of at your mercy here. Again, this was... Not that we're not happy to have your call, but this is, a contractually mandated sort of review. I understand this, this is an episode that in the interest of quality assurance from our benefactors. And so I suppose we're here to answer your questions as much as we are to ask you.
Absolutely. So I think first off, let me just start by saying that I have listened to all of your episodes so far.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you very
Always
much.
Nice to meet a fan.
I really have enjoyed them. I think that there's a lot of really interesting and exciting creativity going on here, and so much potential that I simply cannot wait to
exploit,
get my hands on.
Absolutely.
We don't say exploit anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my first lesson. My first lesson in engaging with the fans. Don't tell them you're exploiting them.
Absolutely.
A good lesson.
You want them to build that parasocial relationship without actually acknowledging the fact that it's not a true give and take relationship.
Right. We're all a family here.
It's exactly.
Okay.
So I think, first off, just to start with some checking in, I'm going to have a couple of questions to get the creative juices flowing.
Absolutely.
So first off, I think, I'd love to know if you have any visions for the Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe fandom, and I've been trying to think about whether we should call that the Dark Universe fandom. Should we go for the whole Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe fandom? So I think we can play with that.
This is good because also do they get like a cute fan nickname? Like, yeah.
Well,
like,
if there's one thing that I learned from being on the music scene, it's that you do not get to name your fan base. It is one of the most cringe things you can do.
Yeah, but here's the thing: is I think what we do is obviously when this comes out, we'll be working with social media people, and you kind of secretly plant the name. You want, right?
We're gonna astroturf
put some feelers out
Yes.
there, and then see what sow some seeds, and then see what grows.
Well, yeah. To answer the question, I mean, I think we're dealing with two fandoms here, right? I think the Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe fandom are fans of the podcast. But the fans of the Dark Universe itself, once it's a movie, that'll kind of be a much different kind of beast. And so that will be, and I think that's who are more, because the podcast fans were we have to wrangle them on our own. But the movie fans, I think that's where Universal really wants to take control with the Dark Universe itself.
I think that we're potentially creating some tribalism here off the bat. Now, it's going to happen one way or the other, but we should be prepared that the people who are into the podcast now are going to naturally, just as this is the way these fan bases work, they're going to hate the people who only watch the movies when they come out, and we're not in on the ground floor.
And they're going to say that the podcast ones were better.
Even when they were probably not, right?
Yeah, no, they're almost certainly not. We're amateurs.
Yeah.
But people will say like, oh, you haven't heard the original podcast episode? Oh, it was so much better.
It's exactly. You're going to have a little bit of, the podcast, the movies, the comics, the movies, the books, the movies. But at the same time, I think that there's room for everybody at our table.
It's a big tent.
It's a real big tent. You should see what they're doing with tents these days. So I think, hearing that helps a little bit. because from my perspective, just to give you a little sense of my philosophy of fandom, I think that there's really two important ingredients that this universe so far is really hitting both of those buttons. One being really interesting and open-ended sort of universe rules and settings. So I think that the fact that all of these settings feel very specific, the way that you've talked about wanting the world to be additive. You've got, your werewolf gyms, your vampire casino, your prodigium mysteries, and your secret tombs.
Yeah.
So all of that feels very tangible.
Yeah.
And like there's a lot of room to run. And then the other thing is that you need to give the fans are compelling character dynamics and relationships.
Definitely.
So it's really all about using those building blocks and creating the best building blocks that we can in order for the fans to really just get their hands all over it and do unspeakable things with them.
Oh, yeah. I really very strongly believe that what the fans do with something after it's out should remain out of the control of the people who created it. I think people who try to police how fans use their characters in fan works or fan art or anything like that, I guess within reason is like, I think it's a little bit, what's the opposite of gracious is the word. It's a bad look.
Yeah.
Miserly.
There we are, right?
It's miserly. Yeah.
Like, I think you have to admit to it in a certain extent that when you're an author, you are dead before your audience meets you.
I'm the opposite of that, where not the opposite of what you're saying, but that person you're describing, because I want the fans to do anything and everything with these characters. You can make you heard it here first. You can make any two Dark Universe characters fuck, and I will support you.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying.
We are fully in support of you doing anything with our property.
Just please, direct people to the podcast when you do it. But I mean to say that, like, I think it's important. Like, I like the idea you're saying we're going to establishing rules, establishing settings, giving people toys to play with, and then how they play with it is their business. They can do it, and I think it's probably going to come up later. For instance, talking about interesting character dynamics. I'm really interested going forward in building a sort of weird father-daughter relationship between our Victor Frankenstein, the creature, and our wolf woman, Gwen Conliffe.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting because Victor is all fucked up over his mother, who is this young woman who is actually the daughter of the body that he used to be, right?
Yeah.
And I think he imprints on her a little bit as here's a mother I can please, right? And then at the end of the Dark Legion House of Dracula, she abandons him.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's an interesting dynamic to keep playing with. And I don't plan to at any point make it sexual. But
the fans
I
will.
fully fucking expect that
fans will.
Fans are going to make it fucky, and that's fine. I'm not going to touch it.
So
That's what fans are for.
I'm so glad that you have such a healthy outlook on this, because it's going to make everything so much easier.
Okay.
We're not prudes here. Yeah.
I don't really want to see the fan art, but I sure
don't have to.
But I want people to make it.
I want to see it.
Okay,
Send it to Dalton.
So no, that's important, because I think that people need to know that Dylan does not want to see your horny fan art, but Dalton absolutely does.
Yeah.
Great. That's
And for the record, the Twitter account, Instagram account, that's both of us. But no, actually, and frankly, it becomes in the interests of making sure that we are embracing fans talking about our work and directing their friends towards the stuff. Yes, of course, tag us.
Tag us in all your horny fan art.
I'll get over it. I like attention.
Dylan's a big boy. He can handle it.
I'm a grown-up.
Dylan can see a titty. He'll be okay.
I mean, hell, I'll look at one.
Dylan is a dad now, but he can still see a titty once in a blue moon.
It's hard with the kid around, though.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah.
All right. Well, leaving that behind. So I think I've got two little questions that I just love to ask creators.
Yes.
First of all, we look a lot at past media experiences and the fandoms that have grown out of those for some analog. So what I'm going to ask first is there a 5-minute cool character that you think is going to have a really devoted following? So this is somebody who I would say appears in one movie or fewer, one
Mhm.
movie or fewer. That's not possible. Somebody who appears in no more than one movie.
Someone with very little screen time comparatively to our main characters.
Exactly. What the analog that I like to use here is the Captain Phasma.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very cool, very shiny, very slick. Absolutely nothing in the text, but my God, did Fandom run with that. It helps that it was Gwendolyn Christie, but maybe we can get her for something later.
Oh, we should, though. It's crazy that we haven't. But what's tricky about that is those are so often driven by a really striking look for a character. And so far being just scripts, just podcasts, we don't have the benefit of like a really strong like Joe Johnston costume design like Boba Fett has. We don't have action figures preceding our films to be people get excited about.
But I think if we just sort of take it as who are some like minor characters because I think also like it would end up being like one of the random vampires, right? In like a vampire horde who like
if we could predict that shit, we would be millionaires, right?
Right.
But I mean, the only thing I could think of is like I really enjoy Regina Hall's character
I was going to say
from
Regina
Invisible
Hall
Man.
too. I think Regina Hall would have a big fan base.
Yeah, we never expect to see her again, but the character is really funny. You can imagine how lively, how well Regina Hall would bring her to life.
Yeah.
And, she's in that vampire world. She's associated with it, and she has connections that precede our film and that presumably follow after that we don't follow, which gives people room to kind of imagine where her story may have gone or would go afterwards.
The other answer I have for this actually is not in my original Frankenstein pitch, but I mentioned it in our phase 2 planning, how in my revision of the Frankenstein pitch, I added these like friend characters for Caroline. And it's like her gay queer love interest and also like this gay playwright and stuff, because they're like analogs of, Lord Byron and stuff. And I feel like those are such like quirky little characters that like they could maybe...
Sure.
But they're not technically based on picture law.
They're not in there yet.
In the dark universe.
It's also the problem that they all get fucking murdered.
Yes, they do get killed.
I think that's fine. That doesn't stop a lot of fans.
Okay,
yeah,
that's true. Boba Fett's been kicking around for a really long time since he fell in that Sarlacc pit. So
yeah, I think Regina Hall is a good one. I think also Walton Goggins, I don't think he counts because he's a little bit larger. He's appeared a couple times.
He's a main antagonist of one movie, and then he gets a reprisal. Like I really think that Chip Lester is fun, even though like there's not a lot to him as a character, but you can kind of imagine him being like, it's Patrick Fabian, so being already kind of a cult actor from Better Call Saul, and then just being kind of like our aloof vampire daddy thing. Well, I feel like that could work. I
also think maybe the other werewolves at the gym in the Wolfman, who are they?
Oh shit, yeah, March and April.
Yeah, March and April would be like that. I feel like they're like tailor made for that because it's two people that you could like write as a ship.
Yeah.
But they have so little screen time
you
that
can
like
really fill in what you want.
It's all blanks to fill in, right? And who are the actors playing them? I forget.
That's Scott MacArthur and Jenny Slate.
Jenny Slate.
I mean, people are going to fan over Jenny Slate right there.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
One of cable TV's best dirtbags and a SNL alum. It's good stuff.
And Marcel the Shell.
Yeah, future Oscar winner Marcel the Shell.
But I think the other question that I have for you is this is helping me get a sense of where we need to go is when there's the Fandom wiki. What is the entry that you most want to see in the Fandom wiki, in the Dark Universe?
Which, by the way, if anyone wants to create a Fandom wiki for the Dark Universe, please do. It'll help us out.
You would be our new favorite friend. And also, it's hard to keep track of this shit without one. It's also gauche to make your own. Right. So,
yeah, we can't do it ourselves.
Honestly,
not.
I mean, it's the obvious answer, but I don't think any Fandom wiki is complete without an entry for breast.
For what?
Breast.
Is that something that happens on Fandom wikis?
Do you not know about this?
I don't know about this.
Wikipedia's breast entry is the stuff of legend. Every reference to anything having to do with breasts in the entire old or new canon is in there. Which species have them? Which species don't? When are they functional? When do people get a peek? What are outfits doing with them? It's comprehensive. And you'd have to think like some lunatic had to do it first. And then it's always one of the 5 most popular ones.
I've been spending a lot of time on Lostpedia recently during my rewatch, and I wonder if Lost if Lostpedia has an entry for breast. I will have to find out.
I mean, I think that once Wikipedia broke that seal, that everyone has to do it.
Interesting. Okay.
I think it's honestly, I feel like its absence would be conspicuous.
Well, I didn't even know that was a thing. My answer was going to be Indrid Cold, because I feel like I would be interested to see what kind of things people keep track of about this, because I feel like we don't really
we don't give a lot of information about Indrid, and it would be interesting to see like
and we give a lot of like sort of vague, conflicting information about him.
That's
and
true.
So
I would probably continue to do so.
I think Prodigium in general, like just kind of keeping track of. We have now so much Prodigium lore between them. First of all, being back in the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies, or like just afterwards in 1959,
Everyone's
as of The Mummy Returns, and then also being in Frankenstein in the 1800s. Or no, that was just Indrid Cold. And then like with the video game and the original Mummy movie, like Prodigium now has their like fingers in every pie,
Sure.
and I feel like that would definitely be the most robust entry in the wiki.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought we were talking about things we wouldn't expect, because a character who appears in like 5 of our movies is obviously going to have an entry.
Well, Dylan, I don't think there's a wrong answer here.
Okay. All right, but as long as we're clear that I gave the right one, then we're fine.
But no, that's important for me to understand is where your heads are at.
Yeah,
I'm open to be surprised, because apparently I don't know fan wiki culture the way I thought I did. So.
Another thing that's neat, that would be neat, especially if it demonstrates that there's a life for your property outside what you make. There are 2 competing Dario wikis, and one of them has a robust like in fan fiction section for most characters that keep track of like popular fanfics that continued the characters or did alternate things. What are people doing with like Jodie in the fan movies? When in the fan fiction world or whatever, like who do people end up with in their 20s according to so and so? Like if they're now that's easier to do once a property is dead, as Daria has been for 20, 25 years, but that is another thing that I think would be very cool to see in a wiki, where it's like you have an idea of not just what's canon and not just what's in like the licensed apocrypha, but what are the things that fans have done with these characters consistently, or like in the famous things. I'm not going to read a lot of the fan fiction. In fact, legally, we can't read any of the fan fiction, but
damn it.
Yeah, but it's kind of cool to get an idea of like, oh, what do these characters mean to people outside of the official text without having to actually peruse through however many fanfics actually exist.
I would also like an entry on the fan wiki for every promise that we have made on the podcast and then not followed through on for even a single episode. I think that would be a good entry.
Times Dylan has used the term booked it in his script.
Honestly, there needs to be an entire page of just every episode in which Dylan makes a Star Trek reference.
That's just every episode.
Yeah, every episode.
The context, what timestamps.
I watched The Mummy Returns 2001 last night.
How many of them did a Star Trek?
Well, there's one main one, which is Oded Fehr. But that reminds me that I have not added a single actor who's done a Star Trek into our universe. And I've written like 3.5 movies.
That's very impressive.
Fucked up. There are 2. There's Annabelle Wallis and Oded Fehr, who are both on Star Trek Discovery, and they were both adopted from other movies. Wow. I'm not doing my job very well, Dalton.
No. Yeah, you got to get on top of it.
And my next one's going to be like all English actors from across the pond that don't make Star Trek there.
So
when am I going to get around to this?
Add this aside to the wiki.
I think, again, you're only in phase 2 right now, so there's still plenty of room to grow.
Yeah, we'll bring Khan in somehow.
Digitally insert Ricardo Montalban into a role.
Yes.
And then have him square off against Benedict Cumberbatch.
Well, that's not my department, so
okay,
I will...
I'm sorry, we're brainstorming
moving on, Frankie.
Here.
No,
we're
absolutely.
brainstorming.
Please stop me.
So, okay, great. So I think the next thing I'd love to talk about is just giving you a sense of where I see some of the biggest successes.
Ooh.
The things about the Dark Universe that make me the happiest as a consultant, because you're making my job so much easier.
Nice. Love it.
So I think number 1, I think that the Carol Halsey relationship is absolute coup on your part.
Mm-hmm.
I think that
Thank
it
you.
is a beautiful relationship to be centering. I think that is a very elegant solve. Hearing how that solve sort of came about of the how do we avoid killing off one of our techie paranormal human
Yeah.
ladies. I think the girlies all love this.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the way that the dynamic, and I do a little bit of predictive work. I do a little bit of channeling, really, to get the fandom mindset. I think that this is a situation where the fan or the fanon or the headcanons is that Halsey is relatively inexperienced with women, whereas Carol is a stone cold freak. And
Yep.
Which I think still feels compatible with where we
yeah.
are.
Oh no, absolutely. I think that
I love
was that's something where I feel like I've been reading it that way, and I'm hoping to write towards that.
Well, and I will admit, I want to be clear, because I've spoken on this podcast about trying to queer up the dark universe a little bit. And that comes from an honest place, I think, like I said, there's a lot of queer subtext to a lot of these monsters already that I don't want to erase, and I want to make sure we're amplifying. Also, as we've talked about, I've been going through a bit of a queer journey myself, and I want to reflect that in the movies. But also, I would be lying if I didn't say that it's been on my mind that, like, so much fan culture does have to involve, like, sort of inventing queerness where there isn't any, because that's what a lot of fans want to see, or where it's not explicit, at least. I want to make it so that the fans don't have to invent the queerness of our characters, that it is actually on screen, and we actually give them more than just like, oh, there was a longing look in movie 4, that you can then extrapolate into your 40,000 word fan fiction, but like that there's meat on the bone,
Yeah, bearing in mind, of course, that every character is going to get shipped with every other character regardless of what we do.
Sure.
So, but yes, but no, it's nice to have it on. It's nice to have it on the page. Nice to have it on screen. I think they're really cute together. I think it's one of your best calls out of a number of great calls in House of Dracula is putting them together, and it's really exciting to be looking down the road at phase 2 of how we're going to do that. I'm really stoked at the idea, now that we can talk about this, that The Mummy Returns is out, of having the next Dark Legion movie like kick off at their wedding and have like a big comic book wedding where everything goes awry. That's really exciting. I got thinking a little bit today about like, promoting that episode and like having like creating like invitations to their wedding.
That's cute.
And like, that's really fun. I don't know if we want to talk about this on the show. I have an idea for the title of the next Dark Legion movie that I think I texted to you and I think you liked.
We'll talk about it off air, because we're talking about the fans. We're not brainstorming.
Okay. Anyway, I'm really excited about the idea that we're not just like, oh, they're there in the background or it's part of it. Like, no, their relationship is evolving on screen, and it has these important punctuation marks in our biggest movies. And they're adorable. It's great. I'm glad that's coming off well.
Absolutely. So, great job on that one. I think that one of the other absolutely really strong aspects is the dynamics that you've started to create with the werewolves. And I think that is something that has incredible, what we call AU or alternate universe potential.
Ooh.
So that's something where I'm predicting that there will be a lot of werewolf AUs and crossovers for other fandoms, other properties, other IP.
Well, that's neat.
I think that the idea of the werewolf mutual aid is definitely something that people are going to latch onto, especially, everybody with the good politics. So I think that, and when I talk about something like the universe rules and settings, I think that the werewolves and the ways in which lycanthropy works and the ways in which the werewolf community is shaped, I think that's a really strong example of that.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's good to hear, because like I have been a little self-conscious about like there's a lot of stuff about werewolves that I haven't been using. They have not been terribly scary as a concept, except for in a couple really good beats in the crossover that Dalton wrote, and the idea that there's something that is additive there to werewolves that's useful to play with in terms of like the political allegories and the call to action for organizing that's gratifying.
And we'll see how that develops in our very next episode.
Yeah, coming up
Werewolves of London.
Werewolves of London
in 2 weeks.
Ahoo.
All right, and then I think that the one last aspect that I'm really seeing as I'm channeling and looking into what I think is really going to move the needle and be the most successful for you is the fact that people really love to come up with their own personas and their self-inserts. So this is something where I think that people will be really interested in creating their own monster sonas.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that you might want to think about a little bit. And, you've talked about how the Universal catalog is really your oyster.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's really a lot of exciting places to play there.
Well, and fans don't have to abide by our Universal, IP restrictions, right? So like a fan, if they want to do a self-insert of a character that's not Universal IP, of course, that's something they're able to do and insert, whoever into the Dark Legion.
That's true. And I was about to say, yeah, we don't have any Yetis now. I realized that apparently since there's Yetis in Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, we actually do have Yetis now.
The Yetis are the only good part of Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. And don't fuck with me or I will bring them back.
But I think the idea that you want as a Star Trek fan, you like the idea of being like, you want to be able to be like, okay, yeah, this is my, this is what I would do on the ship. This is the planet that I'm from. This is, this is my, who am I in this future? Or, like a cool idea in the Matrix being like, all right, here's my cool outfit. Here's my cool, hacker
code
name.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're trying to, again, the ethos of creating space and expansion and being additive instead of being restrictive, I think is a great place to be going here. So yeah, great job. I think that, so there's a couple of things that I think that we may need to talk about though.
Uh-oh. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty.
All right. We're ready.
Well, I don't think that I would not look at these as problems. I would look at them as opportunities. First of all, you need more twinks.
This is true. Yeah.
I think that upon sort of revisiting, the closest thing to a twink that might exist right now in the universe is Larry.
Yeah. We have a lot of old people in the Dark Legion.
Yeah, and there's a lot of discussion right now about twink death, and I think that it's important to really show that twinks are alive and well and
in the Dark universe.
Horrifying. But also, I truly don't think that a werewolf can be a twink. I actually do think that is fundamentally at odds.
Can we introduce a vampire twink into Dracula Lives? Something to think about.
I
think one of the hard things about this is that we're always thinking about casting. And I think you and I both know much more older actors than we do young upcoming actors.
Okay.
At least me. I don't always know the newest people coming out of the CW show.
I have, this brings up the idea of how we can kind of kill two birds with one stone, because there is the concept of twink death, where someone at a certain age ages out of being a twink, which again, it's propaganda. Don't have to buy into that.
That's right.
And my not having introduced any new people from Star Trek, who is a smoking hot senior twink, is Wilson Cruz.
Never heard of him. See, I don't know the twinks. I don't know the twinks.
Dr. Kolber from Star Trek Discovery. Now, then again, I don't know if he counts because he's ripped. You don't see it on the show.
How about this, Dylan? I can share with you some references after the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send them over.
I'm not a twink
future
expert.
Casting decisions.
I'm not an expert either. I'm still, I'm the show's resident cishet, but I've got eyes. Right, but
absolutely, but I think that that's some place where you can really expand. I think you may want to think about how can we appeal to a broad audience.
I mean, Frankie, you're familiar with Mr. Cruz. Am I classifying correctly? Is that cool?
I am not sure that it is exactly. I would say that he's enough of an edge case that I personally would not feel comfortable making that distinction.
Okay, then I really shouldn't either.
Can we keep you on speed dial as our twink consultant? And when we're like, okay, we have this spot for a twink in the movie, we got to cast it. We call you up and say, is this person?
If you want to run
twink
anybody
enough?
by me, I'm happy to take a look.
Okay,
Perfect.
and apologies to anyone listening who is like, that's not a twink. I have to acknowledge my limitations here. I am plugged into, but not a member of these conversations.
You can bill Universal straight for any twink conversation hours that we, call you up on. And if it's outside of normal office hours, just bill them double. But yeah, I think this is an opportunity. I think with Invisible Man following the Wolfman, because Wolfman was centered on younger characters and we only had, sort of Tom Cruise in the middle. I went older with John C. Reilly, but we do now have a Dark Legion that skews a bit older, and we want to be getting the younger audiences. We want to be getting the CW teens and stuff watching. Unfortunately,
the whole Arrowverse is looking for work right now.
The Mummy Returns did not fix that because it introduced basically no new characters outside of, the Brendan Fraser trilogy. My Creature from the Black Lagoon, no spoilers, but not a lot of room for twinks in that one. So,
and if I'm introducing werewolves, which Frankie has said are disqualified,
but
then I'm in trouble because I will be introducing a lot of new characters in Werewolves of London, including I think people who, again, I'm clearly not qualified to make these judgments, but like might fit the profile, but are also werewolves.
Here's what I would say is
I'm just in a corner here about this whole problem. I want to solve this problem. I want to be helpful.
Because the Wolfman sort of is our youngest skewing franchise, maybe there's an opportunity to at least cast twink actors in these werewolf parts as not a full solution, but a step in the right direction. Do you think that's a good idea, Frankie?
I think that's a really good approach. I think that you're not just looking at the characters as the characters, you're also looking at the actors.
Right.
We're not necessarily going to be talking about real person fan fiction, which is sort of that's also not really my department. But that's, I can put you in touch with a colleague if that becomes an issue in the future.
We'll have a separate consulting call episode about it'll be the Twinks episode.
I don't think that you need that to be. I don't think that Universal wants that one on the air.
All right.
Dark Legion 2, Rise of the Twinks.
I'm very self-conscious now about how many times I today on this show on the air have used the word twink. Like, I understand that it's a somewhat of an open practice, but now I'm sweating.
You're not allowed to use that word, Dylan.
Well, let's just move on.
Yes.
Because I think that one of the next things that I would see as an opportunity would be exploring more of the relationships that build between monsters and humans. So this could be romantic. This could be otherwise intimate. But I think that the relationships between monsters and humans, a lot of the monster characters so far have been relating to other monsters.
That's true. And our human characters, we paired up together. So we don't really have a monster-human relationship at any point.
I think that also it's not necessarily saying you need to do this for one thing, for one particular movie. I think it's more things to keep in mind as we continue on this journey.
Yeah.
Again, the important thing is to be giving fans dynamics to project onto. And especially since it is likely that the bulk of the fan base will be human.
Yep, most likely.
I think that's a safe bet.
Yep.
You're never quite sure, but
it's a big internet.
Well, and let's be real, like, we are the franchise out of all movie franchises that is going to attract the monster fuckers.
Exactly. You've got to give the monster fuckers what they want.
Right. The monster fuckers are coming to us saying, hey, give us the monsters to fuck. And we're giving them the monsters, but we're not letting them fuck any fan surrogates.
I think Victor is the big opportunity here. We're talking about a big, bulky monster man played by a very handsome actor who is all stitched up and eeping with pus. That is monster fucker bait if I've ever seen it.
And, we do have Bride of Frankenstein coming up.
Yeah.
So
who's to say that bride can't be just an ordinary, human being? I mean, you are. You're writing the movie. You are to say. But
I'll decide. But there's an opportunity. Yeah. We have to start pleasing we've given the monster fuckers.
You've given food, but you haven't necessarily set the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it.
Mm-hmm. It's honestly surprising to look back at all this and like noticing like, oh yeah, there have been some like big fandom mess ups that we just haven't catered, that like the studio would catch. Yeah. That like the studio will catch and be like, hey, I feel like someone in marketing is going to be like, sorry, but we need a twink in this, or whatever, or like we need this kind of dynamic because it will play well with these markets.
Yeah,
there
was a point in time in Jekyll X Hyde where I did think that maybe there was going to be a romantic or sexual angle that's followed through with between Zoe Kravitz's character and either Jekyll or Hyde.
That's true.
And then I didn't end up pulling the trigger on that because it didn't feel right. But
here's a little.
I also wrote that movie really fast.
Peek behind the curtain. There was actually a scene that you wrote that was flirty between them, but then you said we should cut it out.
I cut it.
So I cut it from the episode. So yeah, there was a kind of flirty scene, but it never got followed through.
Yeah, that was a combination of my feeling like it didn't go anywhere and also just hating the dialogue that I'd written. Like, I'm not a good flirt in real life, and I don't write good flirty dialogue. I can work with characters who are very direct about stuff.
I am giving you an assignment in the Werewolves of London. You got to write a twink that flirts. I'm sorry, but that's what our consultant is saying. Frankie is saying Werewolves of London needs a twink that flirts. Dylan, you got to write it.
Okay, I have already written some stuff in Werewolves of London that I think can help push us in the right direction.
Great.
Okay? And I don't want to go into it yet.
It's not an overnight
We'll
fix.
check in with you about that after that episode online, and we'll see how I did.
Baby steps. We're talking we need to play the long game here.
We're all about the long game here on Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe?
We're building a franchise. It takes time.
Exactly.
All right, what else you got for us?
So I think the last opportunity would be something that you've addressed, but I think I want to encourage you to keep pushing in that direction, which is in the world building, you've really been starting to think about the difference between monstrosity and evil.
Yep.
And I think that is a place that you could keep pushing further. And I think that will lead to some really exciting and interesting places, especially as, we've talked about queerness as an analog to the monstrosity, seeing how we could really continue to push that and make the Dark Universe fandom an exceptionally welcoming and exceptionally inclusive place on the internet, which would really give us some exciting places to go.
I think that's true.
We do a good job, I think, or rather, we want to continue, let's not pat ourselves on the back. I think we make a distinction, like you said, between monstrosity and evil, and I think we make an effort not to demonize otherness in our narratives. I think that's always, it's always about, first of all, half the time, evil in our stories is almost always about people with high status abusing high status, right? It's always punching down, whether it's human corporations or shady organizations with international reach, or the most powerful vampire in the world who's been around accumulating wealth for 1,000 years. But we haven't had a character, with the exception of Victor, and he's got a longer arc, right? Who is bad because of the nature of his being a monster.
Well,
there's Hyde.
It's interesting. Our movies haven't had too many villains in the way that we would think of an MCU movie, because a lot of our movies are about the monsters sort of battling themselves, right? Frankenstein, Victor is battling Victor and Caroline, but there's no bad guy in Frankenstein. There's not really a bad guy I guess the bad guy in Wolfman is just the corporation, but there's not a central, this is the villain of this. Chip, I guess.
I guess he's the proxy for Dracula, yeah.
We've sort of made vampires our generic villain, like Dracula, obviously. But Jekyll and Hyde is about sort of Jekyll battling Hyde.
And the antagonist there is Indrid Cold, but it's hard to really call him the villain of that movie. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but we
don't have a lot of villains other than Dracula and now Imhotep. And I think that makes sense for the first phase of a dark universe where we're making these monsters our main characters. Our monsters are sort of our villains and our heroes at the same time. But now that they've all been established, I think in this phase, we're going to start seeing more villains or bad guys to sort of contrast the sort of monstrosities that we've created as heroes, who are now going to have to, at some point, do battle with real evil, Imhotep or whoever we end up coming up with. So I think that's the kind of thing that will sort of develop naturally as we continue this franchise.
Yeah, and I think that there's something to keep in mind as we go. We talk a little bit about how horror fans, I think, often see themselves, for whatever reason in their life, as sort of outsiders, and that's why they gravitate toward these stories about things or people that are weird or misunderstood, right? And I think, one of the biggest mistakes you could make in trying to create something for those fans is to alienate them by making the creatures universally bad or loathsome
But I actually don't think so.
I don't think that you're doing that. I would also like to point out, I don't think that's that's not necessarily an issue that we're running into. I would say that this is encouraging to keep pushing in the direction that you're pushing.
Okay.
And I think also, like, and Frankie, this is going to be something I ask you, like, does a character have to be somewhat morally redeemable in order for the fandom to latch onto them? Because
absolutely,
that's what I was saying. Like,
what I was saying is universally, of course, we can have monsters who are pure dag nasty evil.
Well, and fans are going to, like, I feel like fans love, like, Michael Myers, Freddy, like Jason, like people are going to latch on to evil
There's no
characters.
one sexier to the internet than a villain who has I can fix him energy, right? That's what the Raylo thing is all about.
Do you know how many words of fan fiction have been written specifically about Kylo Ren and General Hux, the Star Wars?
I've heard about it.
I don't even know who General Hux is.
That's Donald Gleason's character.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it is actually the most popular pairing on Archive of Our Own, I believe.
So, I think as we're talking about here, we sort of got a 3-tiered system of ships, because you've got humans, monstrosities, and then evil. And you've got sort of like a triangle you can make here where you could have fan fiction where the humans are fucking the monsters, or the monsters are fucking the evil monsters, or the evil monsters are fucking the humans. Like there's a nice sort of little triangle here to play with.
Great balance. You can really play with the tension there. I think that gives you some real meat to dig into.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I think those are the bulk of my opportunities that I would share with you.
Okay.
I think that, as I mentioned, I've been doing a little bit of channeling. So what I would like to do is just let you know, sort of as I've meditated on this, two particularly interesting things that I'm foreseeing for this fandom.
Okay.
So first, what came to me was that there is at least one fan fiction series that is about the length of 3 full novels.
Of course, yeah.
That is explicitly about Jack and Dudley.
Yes.
And contains almost no references to anything else in the story, but is somehow the most beautiful and poignant story of obsession and redemption.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I'm really just trying to astral project and find something, and that's one of the really, I think, beautiful fruits that I plucked to bring back for you.
I think that makes sense because there's a lot of sort of BDSM and control built into that dynamic as it is on screen. It's a lot of Jack being tied up and being forced to come back to Dudley because of the poison in his system. That happens. Like there's definitely a kink element to their relationship that, of course, in the movies is non-consensual.
But in fan fiction,
that's kind of, something to play with.
I mean, for my part, I was just thinking about Decision to Leave, but recasting the cop as Dudley and the suspect as, you got to see Decision to Leave. It's so good. But like a sort of like longing, simmering romance between the suspect in a murder and a cop, but in this case can be like a dirty vampire cop and an invisible man.
Yeah. Do you think Jack is invisible in this fan fiction, or does this all take place before the invisibility?
I think that wasn't really super clear to me.
Okay.
Based on the messages that I was getting.
I feel like that's something to play with in a fan fiction, right? Like touching someone's feeling someone where they are. I can't see you, but I'm
only way to get to that no person is to be
touch.
Attacked.
Yeah, now you have to touch them in order to
especially because we've already established that I would say that Jack's dick and balls is already part of...
They're a character in our narrative.
They're a character of their own. So I think that also really gives us a lot to go with.
Oh yeah, we're also working with a character who's naked all the time. And yet you can't see him. So there's the kind of thing, there's any scene with Jack can take an erotic turn at any moment. So...
It's true. And he's a lonely guy.
Someplace really, I think I'm really, really looking forward to that one coming to fruition.
I can't wait to read. I'm legally not allowed to read it, but I will.
And then I think that, I also did some of my meditation thinking about what are the fan theories that you're going to encounter. And I think that the one that really bubbled up to the top is, interestingly, I think the only Marvel comparison that I'm going to be making today. which is there's a subset of fans that are absolutely convinced that Vale is going to return in the future as some sort of undead villain, Winter Soldier style.
Wow. That's a good theory.
Had not occurred to me.
It had not occurred to me either, but it is really kind of a Bucky Barnes situation.
Yeah, he's sacrificed in, the middle of one of the stories, and we assume, as they did in the comics for 40 years, that like this guy dead could never come back, even in this world where people come back from the dead all the time. This character is capital D dead.
Well, because we make such a big deal of him coming back over and over and over, and then he is the one time, he's like the moment we realize, oh, there are some people that can't come back.
Yeah, and you can imagine that if, like in the case of Bucky, someone else brought him back and managed to do it, there would be an axe to grind. So
we do have Emotep out there now with some Emotep powers. Well, that is quite a theory.
That is interesting.
We did Bucky Barnes him.
But I think that in general, I do want to really tip my hat to you both for creating such a universe that was really the only Marvel comparison that really came to me.
Wow, yeah, that feels great to hear.
We make Marvel comparisons all the time.
Yeah, we do.
The show.
It's one of the we have to really kind of. But I feel like the work that we've done to not just make the MCU, I guess, has been paying off. Because a lot of the conversations we have about Marvel, sometimes are like, this is kind of like our Iron Man 3, but sometimes we're like, well, we don't want to do that.
I think, to our credit, we are completely uninterested in remaking the MCU. To a point. I mean, we are remaking the MCU like structurally.
It's part of the rule that we're doing the exact structure of the MCU. The conceit of
the pod, I mean, the conceit of our agreement with Universal is that we're sort of recreating the arc of the franchise. But I think as far as storytelling and the content of the movies go, we are definitely not trying to make like, now it's time to make our Quantum Mania.
So yeah, of course, now this is the first episode we're recording after the DC announcement where James Gunn announced basically phase 1 of the new DCU.
Which is called Gods and Monsters, which is our fucking tagline. This is our first time talking about this. James Gunn, you're on fucking notice, buddy. Gods and Monsters is a line from Bride of Frankenstein by James Whale, and that is Dark Universe property. Dark Universe was announced with the tagline, A New World of Gods and Monsters. And our podcast was announced with the tagline, A New World of Gods and Monsters.
Yeah, we got there first. And as soon as Universal decides to acknowledge our existence,
we're suing your ass.
Absolutely.
Sorry. Anyway.
I'll take that into consideration. I may send a few emails.
Oh, thank you.
See what I can do.
If you have any consulting, appointments with James Gunn, pass along that message for us.
He's on our shit list now.
I'm not at liberty to discuss my other clients.
We will not be hiring him to direct a Dark Universe film out of because of this.
Nope.
He was definitely on the table.
We're gonna pick some other Trauma Films veterans.
Who did fucking...
We're going to have Lloyd Kaufman direct all of our future Dark Universe. That's a joke for like maybe 10 listeners. But
I fizzled out before I could say who did Repo the Genetic Opera.
Don't get me started on that movie.
I fucking hate Repo the Genetic Opera. My wife loves it.
I don't want to piss off any fans. I don't want to piss off any fans. I know we probably have some fans that love Repo the Genetic Opera.
And it's okay. I married a fan of Repo Genetic Opera. She showed me that movie. She made me watch it, and I still married her. So,
and I'm open to marrying a fan of that opera. Just let me know. Anyway.
I think that's just a beautiful, beautiful note to end on.
Okay, yeah.
Because that's really the bulk of my contributions today. So I think I'd love to open it up if there's any other questions or anything else that's been on your mind that you'd like to chat about. Otherwise, I think that you're doing really great work. I'm really excited to see where we go next with this.
Thank you. I really appreciate your soothsaying and your predictions of where the fandom is going to go. I think that's all very accurate. And yeah, I also want to just encourage any fans out there of the podcast that, of course, we encourage all fan creations, whether that's fan fiction or fan artwork or...
we also accept just high fives. We'd like those too.
But if you're feeling inspired by any particular episode, we are open to that stuff. And this was very informative. This gives us a lot to chew on going into the rest of phase 2, because it's a good thing we did this now, because we still have a lot of phase 2 ahead of us.
We do, yeah.
And we're still formulating so many new characters, like the creature from Black Lagoon, Phantom of the Opera. We're going to be probably introducing new characters in our sequels. And now we have some guideposts to aim for as far as fan interaction goes.
Now we know that there is a demand. We can, before every single one of our movies, very publicly announce that the Dark Universe is adding their first twink character. And we will do that every single time until it sticks.
I think actually,
we're cutting the twinks out of the Chinese edits.
I would say that Phantom of the Opera might actually be a really great opportunity for some opera twinks.
Ooh, opera twinks.
Okay.
Love that. That's Dylan's wheelhouse.
I'm writing that one. I do have to say, as much fun as I'm having, I feel a little bit like I should not be responsible for the twink management of the universe. It's not my fault that it's an incredibly fun word to say. If anyone's upset that I'm using it, I apologize.
Dylan, it's okay. It's okay to say twink.
Okay.
Well, see, Frankie's the person asked because I feel like, we don't want to get canceled for any of but this is just, it's diversity, it's inclusion.
Yes, we want all kinds in our universe.
And we want
all kinds to feel represented, and we want people to crush all sorts of characters.
And we want to welcome all horny fan individuals into the Dark Universe. We will not kink shame you for whatever it is. If the scene where Van Helsing and his wife ate each other to death made you horny, Godspeed and welcome to the Dark Universe.
There's one of you out there who I know is listening.
we're happy to have you.
I can think of at least 3.
Oh yeah, it's a charged moment. So thank you. This gives us a lot to think about outside of our normal, just sort of like in our heads movie storytelling stuff. It's an important perspective.
I think especially since this is your first time really working in this big franchise capacity, I think it's just important to take in additional perspectives and really make sure that you are exposed to different facets of the industry.
Because those fans are going to spend money, and the goal of all of this is to get them to spend that money. Oh,
no, stop talking about that. They don't want to hear that.
They don't want to hear that.
That was the first rule we established.
I have a question. Who do you think has the most popular fan cams?
Ooh, who do I think has the most popular fan cams?
Who's going to get fan cammed the most?
And there's another.
I could see.
I was going to say, I think
Gwen or Larry.
I think Gwen could get fan cammed a lot.
Yeah.
I'd be really interested in hearing like what songs people use.
No, I was going to say, I think Gwen will get fan cammed. I think that Frankenstein will get fan cammed. I think that Victor will get fan cammed.
I think Caroline will get fan cammed because she's kind of like she's a girl boss, and she's like kind of she's a queer girl boss.
I mean, we're going to have to remind people about Caroline. Again, the movie will come out, and then people will
right. But like once people see Frankenstein, who Caroline was the creator of the monster and daughter of Victor, who then creates the bride at the end, goes toe-to-toe with Frankenstein.
She's a bit of a lot of like good looks throughout the movie.
She's our final girl and our mad scientist, like all in one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's really going to be a lot of material to play with, especially the way that I think we're discussing the visuals of that film.
It'll be nice to see when we have some popular cosplays to happen. It's really hard to say
at Dark Universe Con.
Yeah, when we have our own big conventions. It's really hard to say before we've established everyone's visual aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
Like I try to put a little detail sometimes about what people are wearing, but obviously most of it's still in people's imagination. I don't think everyone's going to be like, yeah, I want to wear a Villalobos gym sweatshirt. It's like, it's not the most flattering garment for people to want to wear.
I've worn stranger sweatshirts, so.
We should sell Villalobos gym sweatshirts, though.
I wonder which character would get have some sort of viral TikTok canceling them. It's like this character is problematic.
All of them, Dalton.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
they're mostly murderers.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Victor. Victor kills a kid several times.
It'll be funny to see that people want to make sure that we cancel Dracula as if he's not textually very bad from the moment we meet him.
Yeah, I think that there's also going to be some canceling of Jekyll. Specifically Jekyll, not Hyde.
No, Jekyll deserves to get canceled.
I think that Jekyll is going to get canceled.
Oh, he deserves it.
I tried canceling Jekyll in our first episode. Well, I think this has been illuminating.
Yeah, Frankie, thank you so much for joining us, and knowing that we have your wisdom and support in our corner and in our relationship with Universal is very it's very reassuring as we move forward with phase 2.
And I think this has been a great palate cleanser after The Mummy Returns.
Yeah.
And how dark that episode was.
The fans need a laugh. I've been getting some texts, some texts that are both congratulatory to you and also like, God damn it.
That's what I'm here to do.
All right. Well, thank you once again to our guest, Frankie Starker. Thank you to all of you who are listening to the show. If you haven't already, please subscribe to us on whatever your favorite podcatcher is, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Dark Universe Pod.
And you can also, I guess, follow us on Facebook now.
Yeah,
it's
we're on
mostly
Facebook.
just
It's
going to be
the
our
same
Instagram
shit as our
stuff.
Instagram, yeah.
And you can email us at darkuniversepod@gmail.com.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that we usually have the picture lock thing to do. We don't have to do that today. So the whole structure of our podcast is kind of fucked. We don't know what to do now. We don't know what to do with ourselves.
But we know what our ending line is now.
That's
we
right.
have settled on that. So thank you, Frankie. And until next time, which will be The Werewolves of London by Dylan Roth. But until then, stay afraid of the dark universe.